Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee meeting, 28th of January. This meeting is being broadcast live to members of the public via the internet. First on the agenda is apologies. Ben?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Tony Pickenell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. I'm aware that Councillor C wants to make a statement. He's asked me to do so. So, Jonathan, do you want to make a statement before we decide whether we're going to agree the minutes? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I understand that the minutes of the meeting are just that, when I spoke about Wiltshire Publications at our last meeting, I made a couple of comments that I think I need to clarify. I stand by my comments about biased journalism by the senior Melksham reporter of the Melksham Independent News. However, on matters of detail, I need to be crystal clear that I commented about the financial management of Wiltshire Publications, and rather than stating they are struggling financially, I perhaps should more accurately have stated that their publicised accounts show that for the past 5 years they have existed by the drawing down of reserves to manage their current business, and that's a point of clarification. It's also clear that it was for several weeks and not months, as I stated, before officers ceased sending press releases to the Melksham Independent News that the paper chose not to use them. I stand by all the other comments that I made, and I think that I know the editor of the Melksham Independent News has expressed concern about these matters causing reputational damage to his newspaper, and he's probably correct. But in my opinion, removing political bias from this newspaper would be a good start in restoring the confidence lost by many of us in the publication. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. So, and as the minutes are not verbatim, and then that is not actually recorded in the minutes, are we quite happy to agree that the minutes are correct? Does anybody have any objections to that? And if they don't, I'll sign those later on. Thanks very much. Okay, on to agenda item 3, which is declarations of interest. We've all got an interest in this, but any declarations of pecuniary, as it were? No, thank you very much indeed. I haven't got any public participation, have we at all? No, that's absolutely fine. Okay, on to number 5, which is Chairman's announcements, the overview and scrutiny legacy process. Yes, Chris.
The screen there it's a mirror image in reverse. Can we?
That's in case somebody joins on Teams. It's all good.
Never seen that before. Thank you.
It's all good.
Right, on to the overview and scrutiny legacy process. This is an opportunity just to lay out the situation, an opportunity for overview and scrutiny to look back on its activity during the outgoing council is an important part of our journey from a scrutiny perspective. Doing so allows us to consider our successes and challenges, including key activities that we can look forward to recommending for the next council to maximise the impact of scrutiny. At our next meeting in March, we will receive a report outlining our key activities during 21 to 24 and also proposing some future work priorities. To feed into this process, members will soon be receiving an email from Henry, and I would ask them to come back with any ideas they have that we should put forward for the next council with regard to scrutiny. Please do this as conveniently as you can, but as quick as you can as well. These will then be used to form a formal report that we will put in from ONS management after the elections. Okay, today is an interesting day because this is our, moving on to agenda item 6, this is the budget. So in agenda item supplement 2, we have a report and appendices presenting the draft budget for 25-26 and the medium-term financial strategy 25-26, 27-28. On page 19 of our agenda pack, we have a short report setting out a suggested process for our considerations of the budget today. This is what how the route we always follow. But before I run through that process, I'd like to note that our debate today is in the context of the following recent meetings: a budget briefing from all members on the 22nd of January, special budget meeting of the Financial Planning Task Group on the 24th of January, and I would like to say that I think that was a hugely positively successful meeting, informal meetings of other 3 select committees where questions on the budget were submitted to the chairman to be put to the executive here today. And again, a really good selection of questions. So thank you very much from the select committees. For this item, I suggest we take the following approach. I will ask our leader, Richard Kluwer, to opening remarks with, of course, the Cabinet member, Nick Botterill, as well. Then any remarks that the Senior Exec, Lucy Townsend, may wish to make. Lizzie Watkins, our Corporate Director and Resources and Section 151 Officer as well. We will then have the report of the Financial Planning Task Group from PIP following the meeting last week. This is included, should you wish to look at it, please, Supplement 1, or it may be Supplement 2, but it's in the supplement, so apologies if I've not got the right number. Then I will ask the chairman and vice chairman of the select committees to ask the questions. And what we've done is we've printed them all out, so everybody should have a copy. Is the top table got a copy as well?
No, I'll print it.
So well, just to refresh everybody, so they don't have to be on your computer. We just felt it was really useful for people to make notes as well against. And then I'll go around to members of the committee and then anybody else in the audience who wishes to make comment. 7, the key points of our debate today will form a report to Cabinet on the 4th of February and, of course, full council on the 25th of February, along with the budget report of the Financial Planning Task Group. An additional meeting of this committee to scrutinise any opposition amendments to the budget before full council has been arranged for Thursday, the 13th of February. The deadline for submitting budget amendments for consideration at the meeting is 5 p.m. on the 5th of February. So is everybody happy with that process? Because if it is, I'll turn my page back and go back through it. So, Richard, would you like to open us up, please, with comments? And it's good if I just preamble to say that this is one of the first budget meetings where we haven't discussed everything over and over, and we all feel that we are just repeating the same questions. So this is very fresh. It's out in the public domain. Over to you, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I, as usual, will save the politics for the council chamber. I don't think it's helpful to have the political knockabout more than once. I think just a bit of context. If you look at the even the mainstream media at the moment, the pressure that various councils are under is clearly huge. There was an article this morning about the impact of homelessness and particularly B&Bs on infant mortality, which is incredibly depressing, and the whole sector. There's just a constant bombardment of bad news. I want to reassure you that we are still in a good, solid financial position. We're not facing that kind of situation, and increasingly I talk to other council leaders who are almost tearing their hair out about how to deal with some of the challenges that other parts of the sector are facing. We're not there. I don't pretend it's easy. The constantly increasing proportion of our budget on social care, every year it's going up by a little bit more and a little bit more, and that is a huge challenge, but we are not seeing the gaps of 100, 180 million that other councils are seeing. If you look at the MTFS, I think there's a fair amount of reassurance that could be taken there. I will touch on one point on the MTFS that we didn't go through, and we will probably cover a little bit more detail at Cabinet, but in an ideal world, we would see every saving identified in the MTFS. We know pretty much what is required for next year. It's particularly AI has now got to a point where we need to be capitalising on some of the benefits, but in a way that works. And rather than rushing into that, officers are working them up, that work is going on, but we've not crystallised the savings that can be delivered from that at this stage. I don't know if officers will want to comment more. We've certainly had significant discussions around it. I think we need to be slightly cautious. The idea of mainstreaming AI into the council's vein, or mainlining AI into the council's veins, I'm not quite sure that that kind of language is particularly where we want to be. I think we want to be making sure that we use it to deliver efficiencies, but in a way that actually works for residents, and a slightly more cautious approach, perhaps, than that being echoed by various national governments right now. I think the other important factor, I'm sure we all see it as councillors from discussions with our own residents, the cost of living pressures are not going away. Increasingly, people are struggling, and everything we can do to make sure that we are taking as little as we have to, but enough to make sure that we can still deliver the services to the most vulnerable, is an overriding thought at the back of my mind as we go through this process. I'm not going to go any further. I'll let Nick run through details, because I get to steal all his thunder when it comes to full council. So I'll give him a chance to run through it here and at Cabinet.
So thank you, Richard. Well, actually, I'm not going to also take a lot of your time up here, because clearly it is your meeting to raise the points that you want and get questions answered. But what I would say is this year has been particularly difficult in terms of setting a budget. As Richard says, the constant inexorable rise of demand, something like £53 million worth of gross pressures have been incorporated into this budget. I mean, we're seeing this demand ongoing coming out at the Q3 stage as well. So we've been able to incorporate that into our forward thinking. Inflation, which is whatever the figures say, and some feeling that inflation is going to start ticking up again soon. But inflation is a real problem for us, and particularly the types of things that we do. And one thing that we probably could have expected to be not a problem, or not so much of a problem this year, was the element of government funding, because we were told that it was going to be a standstill settlement, which we'd fully incorporated into our thinking, and we were told we were going to be fully recompensed for things like the increase in employers' national insurance. That, of course, didn't turn out to be the case, and we can't argue that we got less government funding, because we didn't, but bear in mind inflation on those sums and things like that. But we certainly lost probably up to £8 million of money that we thought we were pretty sure to get. And bear in mind, we're not funded generously. We are one of the lowest supported councils in the country by government. So, we didn't really expect that situation to get worse, but it did. Having said that, we have managed to fund all our services fully in this budget. We rely on £14 million worth of savings. People keep expressing surprise about savings. Oh, every year you have to save money. Well, yeah, that's life. Any enterprise, any organisation like us, savings are as necessary every year as it's necessary to make sure that your car has sufficient lubrication in the engine to make it work. So savings are a constant and a sign that we are on top of what we're doing. We are constantly trying to do more with less. We are constantly trying to transform the way in which we deliver services, and that is ongoing and is part of our approach. So savings have played a part. Although when I say 14 million, remember our net budget is going up to £527 million next year. That's an increase of 7%. From this year. I think it's always helpful to put these things in proportion. So we are going to take, when it comes down to council tax, we're going to take the full 2% adult social care levy. Those we managed, as I said earlier on, to fully fund those services. On the general side, though, we are proposing to take slightly less than the maximum at 2.5%. And that's a recognition, essentially, that a number of place areas, and I'd probably highlight here leisure and recreation being one of them, but there are others as well, are performing particularly well, and that performance is actually increasingly positive. So that's why we actually don't need to take quite as much money on that side. So we are able to keep the overall council tax increase to 4.5%. But I'd say that's still more than inflation, the general rate of inflation. And as Richard said, there is a cost of living crisis that is not going away. And bear in mind, we are funded by the public out there. So we are part of their cost of living crisis. That's probably all I want to say at this moment. But I've seen, just seen the series of questions and things. So I'll listen to your deliberations with interest.
Thanks, Nick. At this point, does Lucy or Lizzie want to say anything? You'll have lots of opportunities for questions. Over to you, Lizzie.
I will. That's okay in terms of some of the context about the budget. So you've heard from both the leader and Councillor Bottrell in terms of difficult times as a sector. We are facing significant demand pressures, significant inflationary pressures, not alone in terms of what the sector faces. I do just want to point out, though, and I would always refer you to paragraphs 181 to 202, so pages 38 to 41 in the budget pack, which is my commentary as Chief Finance Officer, sets out some of the context in terms of some of the legalities. The focus really is absolutely focused on setting a balanced budget for the next financial year. You will see years 2 and 3 are not balanced due to significant uncertainties in those years. So we will be facing funding reforms. Government have confirmed that those funding reforms will come forward next year. We will go through consultation processes. We have seen from the reallocation of funding as part of the provisional settlement for the 25-26 financial year that as a council, we are not seeing significant increases in some of the grant funding. So it is a concern for us in terms of that trajectory, direction of travel in terms of government funding and what that might mean for us as part of those reforms. And of course, a couple areas of significant risk for us. Big one remaining is high needs DSG. You will see there is a paragraph in my financial commentary that sets out an absolute presumption about the government looking at SEN reform and particularly about us having some type of resolution to the cumulative deficit. Without that, the second year of the MTFS is going to be very difficult for us in terms of not understanding the proportionality of that deficit that has to be funded locally. So paragraph 202, really important in terms of a presumption there that reform will tackle that deficit and the accounting of that deficit and who will be responsible for managing the overall financial impact of that. I'm going to leave it there. I do have other corporate leadership team officers with me in terms of answering the questions. I appreciate that members haven't had significant amount of time since the budget papers were originally published last week. And there may be some questions that at the moment we do not have the detail today to be able to answer, but we will be able to provide answers for them as we go forward over the next few working days. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lucy. I now move to PIP, if I may, on its appendix, supplement 2, rather, where the task group is in. It's 1. It is 1. Oh, we've got a discussion here as to whether it's 1 or 2. Right, it is 1. I've been chastised by Henry there. Right, over to you, Pip.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'm only going to say a few brief things because you've got the report in your pack from the Finance Planning Task Group, which we looked at the strategic issues, not the operational one, obviously, and we're doing Q3 on Thursday for our sins. There were a lot of unknowns, some serious risks, and some of the assumptions, and of course, adult social care, cost of living, percentage staff pay increase, which has not yet been agreed, understand. National insurance, where there is a knock-on effect, and even more so to some of the contractors, and the savings that will have to be very carefully monitored because they have a huge impact on this budget. Having said that, I'm not going to repeat what the cabinet member, the leader, and Lizzie in particular has said, because it's up to the rest of you. We've done our bit as best we can with what was known last Friday, and there are a few things really that are unpleasant, like losing the rural services grant, which is a bit naughty when Wiltshire is primarily a rural county, but that's the government, I'm afraid. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Pip. Okay, now I've just checked out. There are something like 35 questions here. And if we look at, 2 or 3 minutes, we go to 5 or 6 minutes for each question. We're here for a very long time. Having said that, all the questions need to be asked and said but I would encourage people to be as brief as possible, but get the clear message across. So I'll move to John, if I may. Children's Select, there's a series of questions there, John. If you could, for the record, for those out in the public, if you could ask the question and then we'll get an answer, that would be just dandy. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I start on that, Chair, could I just ask for a quick clarification from Nick? Because there was something you said in your introduction that confused me. Now, in fairness, I've only had one coffee so far this morning, so it's not going to take a lot. But it was about the £8 million less or not less that we're getting from government. Because at one point you said you could argue that the government's not giving us any less than they would be, or they said they would. And then it was, I think, but just to help a stupid person.
You did ask this question at the briefing, I seem to remember. When you plan these things, you have certain pots of money that you expect to either continue, increase, or be reduced. That's just the nature of it. Okay? And there are funds that we assumed would continue. We were told there weren't going to be big changes at all. And, we were led to believe that there would probably be the sort of uplift that you would overall see from the inflationary situation. That's what I took that to mean, I think officers as well. So when the actual settlement came out, it appeared that certain grants had actually ceased, and those were grants that we were expecting to continue. Now, there was some more money in certain areas, adult social care, there was some more money, but we were expecting that already because they'd already made an announcement that there was going to be something on that. So the grants that we lost are I think they're listed, aren't they, in the somewhere, anywhere. But on top of that, you've got things like the national insurance, 750,000. We were told we would be funded in full for that. And it appears, and it's still unclear, but at this moment in time, when we're having to produce the budget, we have to assume that it's, the calculations we made are that we are 750,000 light on that, or will be 750,000 light on that. So adding up all these things, I think you get to a total that's about just shy of £8 million. And that's what I'm saying. We didn't think we were going to have to, you know what 8 million quid is in terms of council, just in terms of council tax or services or whatever. It's a big, it's when you're looking at 527 million, you might say, well, not that much, but of course it's at the margins, and it is a material sum, and it's something that we didn't expect.
Forgive me, Nick. It wasn't me that asked that. But if I've understood that correctly, then, and this wasn't a question to try and catch you out, it was a question for me to try and understand. That the government, strictly the government funding has continued as they said it would, but there have been a number of other changes that have meant that there's additional pressures of no.
I'm sorry. It's I said I wouldn't be political, but you're pushing me to it. It's incompetence. They haven't provided national insurance funding to deal with the housing revenue account. They forgot they existed by the look of it, or public health. So despite assuring us that we'd be fully funded in some of these things, suddenly there are huge gaps. We still don't know what those gaps are. We may not even know till after we've set the budget, because we're that good at getting information out to local councils at the moment from central government. It's a bloody shambles.
Look, I'm on the LGA, we're dealing with it there, trust me. I'm not trying to defend the government, I'm trying to understand. So if I put that answer a different way then, it could be that there's an £8 million gap between what the government think they need to be funding and the reality of what it is it's costing.
We expected that money to come.
Yeah, I think we're on the same. We're using
And
different
they
language. But on the same
taken that money away. They've decided that
Yeah, they're gonna shout
rural
at me,
counties do not need rural service delivery grant, for instance. £4.5 million. I'm not quite sure how we're less rural now than we were. Or on April the 1st, we'll be less rural.
Give them a couple of years.
You're singing to the choir, Nick, on that. So let's go to these questions that we've passed through. I'm going to skip a couple of them because I think that there's some more. Like the first one's more of a point than a question, and I don't think spending time trying to answer it. Third one down, we got there. How will the placement sufficiency programme of work achieve the £350,000 savings?
Can I please get officers to answer on the detail of some of these? Because I don't, you need to be assured, and being assured from me is
I would
not the
rather
same
that
as being
was-
assured
That's
from an officer.
absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Over to you, Darryl.
Thank you. Good morning. So that's a piece of work that's being led at director level. So bringing together operational services around commissioning, placements and operational teams. So we're driving out efficiencies through staying close, making sure that we take every opportunity to step down placements from high cost to low cost, bringing in-house fostering and the like. So it's across the broad spectrum of work focused on placements management.
Okay. Did we cover the fostering one? No, in that case, I'll just follow up on that if I could very quickly. We know that we've got a shortage of in-house fostering. We know that there's a national shortage of foster carers. There's all sorts of campaigns going on to try and recruit more foster carers. But nationally, this isn't going as well as everybody would like, and it is tough to get them. We're in tough times, which disincentivises people stepping into that. So how confident are we that we're going to recruit those extra in-house foster carers that we've not previously been able to recruit, because we're basing savings on assuming we're going to recruit these people, aren't we?
So you're absolutely right that it's not just a local challenge, it's a national challenge. It's being addressed in part at a national level through initiatives such as the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, looking at promoting kinship care and the like. So we're part of a regional group looking at recruitment. That's been very successful for us so far, but of course, as you know, you almost have to run to stand still in terms of foster care recruitment. So we're as confident as we can be. We've got a good track record. We've got a good reputation amongst carers. We have very competitive fees and allowances for foster carers compared to our comparable neighbours and the independent fostering agency market. And we value the work that foster carers do. And I think that counts for an awful lot in terms of retention and recruitment.
So the next one down, page 75, it looks as if 4 qualified social worker posts are being removed and case reviews to be carried out by less qualified staff, i.e. family key workers. If that is what is happening, can reassurance be given that this is the right decision?
So it isn't the case that we're moving the direct work of children who would historically have been held by social workers, so high-risk cases, for example, into family key workers. We've got a good history of investment in early intervention and prevention, and so the family key worker roles came about. This is about, as you know, social work posts are challenging to recruit to. Again, that's both a local and a national role. As a result, despite continual recruitment processes, we've always got some vacancies. We're also confident that we've got good management of caseloads, good management of the work that we do, and that we can therefore safely remove the posts that we've referred to in that line. Family key workers work with families which are a much lower level of need, lower level of risk. they are nonetheless supervised but at a high professional standard. So it's not the case that we're moving high-risk cases that would have been with social workers into family key workers. It's part of the investment in early intervention and prevention, and you start to see that shift in work and the vacancies that are being removed. It isn't about removing social workers that have currently got caseloads. It's about using vacant posts that we've currently got and safely knowing that we can move them.
And will there be more detail about what that sort of process change will be and what the responsibilities that are moving across will be later on for us to be able to have the committee get greater clarity?
Absolutely. You know, as chair of the select committee, that we periodically report back anyway on service performance, service need, and any service change that goes through. So absolutely, we'd be having conversations with the committee about that. So we believe that they are. You're absolutely right that they're challenging. This is not a new saving in the line. This is a continuation of MTFS for us. We've already invested in route planning technology, and in terms of the capacity point that you raised, we've identified key member of staff time for 2 days a week so we can make sure that we exploit all available opportunities for savings as we go through. And again, in terms of training of our staff, looking at our routes, looking at our fleet, there's an awful lot of activity going on in that area at the moment.
And building on that, I suppose, is the page 18, paragraph 67, makes reference to SEN transport across the medium-term financial strategy. When is that to be sort of seen in there?
So we're currently working on the detail of savings for years 2 and 3, and of course that's evidence-led. So that work is ongoing at the moment.
Oh yes. What's your confidence level of actually being able to attract the £500,000 funding from health?
I have a high degree of confidence on that one. We're working very closely and I think effectively with our ICB colleagues. We've already realised income of around about £500,000 in this financial year. So that's their contribution to packages of care and support for children with complex needs and medical diagnoses. I can also say that we're doing a piece of work with 2 other local authorities across the ICB footprint, with the ICB, looking at how we build that into more of a solid funding formula. So I think it's a reasonable assumption that we'll achieve a similar income in the next year. But also I've got confidence that we'll be able to increase that income in future years based on the work that we're currently doing.
And just to reinforce that, I think the partnership, the work and the relationship building that we've been carrying out as a council at all levels with the ICB seems to be paying off here. So I shared your concern when that was suggested, but both talking to officers, but also through other lines of sort of checking, it seems that yeah, that relationship is actually becoming significantly more productive in terms of working out how we can reduce costs for everyone with the appropriate use of combined money.
So sorry, I'm so sorry. Page 20, paragraph 26, identifies £319,000 of savings through staffing reviews and the deletion of vacant posts. As these posts are vacant, and therefore we're not talking about individuals, are you able to tell us what those posts are?
So as I recall, they're detailed in other lines on the savings, but that's removal of 2 additional social works from the support and safeguarding team spread over 2 years, removal of 2 vacant posts in the social work teams, that review of the caseload you talked about in terms of children with disabilities and family support workers, and we're moving some of the assessment work into the safeguarding and support team. So again, we're able to take 2 posts out of there. The majority of those are those vacant posts that we referred to earlier on. And or then, if they're not currently vacant, they'll be through natural wastage during the year. So there's no question of redundancies or anything like that.
No, I hear that, but that's 6 social worker posts.
across the whole of the piece, yes.
Okay. And then if I could, Chair, just a couple of general comments that members were making. First of all, it would be really, we're referencing Annex 7, saying it would be really helpful if the savings section included paragraph references to the subject in the main report, so one can cross-reference the things easier.
I'm happy to take that. So in terms of reporting improvements, we're always looking to further that reporting improvements so the reader can better understand and trace through. We are really aware that these budget papers are really lengthy, yes, and it isn't easy to kind of work your way through to some of the detail. So we will consider how we can really improve in that space, particularly for next year. We are already looking at what improvements we can make to next year in terms of greater detail, so you can track some items through both budget monitoring, but also for budget setting for next year.
But just to come to Lizzie's defence on that, and I think
it's a constructive comment.
But I think it's important to note, I'm pretty sure, Lizzie, we added at least one paragraph in the minutes probably before the report was actually published online, which would have blown all of the referencing because an extra paragraph had got in. So there can be all sorts of things, and when we're getting information from government at the kind of rate we are, there is a limit to what can be done because, well, perhaps it could be automated because at the moment that's not functioning that way.
So I'll send you details of a Word training course where you can reference paragraph numbers that automatically update.
But the problem is quite a few of our images, particularly in those tables, are taken from Excel to ease that kind of filtering and reporting as well. So it is an area we know we do need to make some improvements.
But jesting aside, it was just feedback
absolutely
meant constructively towards.
And absolutely hear you in terms of cross-referencing and understanding the makeup of some of the detail that's in the narrative.
Chair, there are two final questions that are there, but in all fairness, I think they're more of a political nature and not appropriate to scrutiny as such. So I would leave it to the leader if he wished to respond to them. But I think they're more in the spirit of what you were saying earlier, Richard, and I would agree, more for the chamber than they are the committee room.
Chair, if I may, I think the first one, which is what will be the impact of savings on the delivery of children's services, we wouldn't be accepting any of these if we hadn't been assured by officers that we're not going to be seeing any impact that we'd see as significant or concerning. And whenever we go through this process, savings will come forward that will be rejected because we feel that they are concerning, and officers will put savings forward with caveats that say this will have an impact. Fortunately, given the position we are in as a council so far, we have been able, whenever we get those, to find a way to simply say no to them. So there wouldn't be savings in here. And this isn't a political point. This is an ethical, a function of the council point that we felt after assessment and discussion with officers were going to be causing problems with delivery of service. I think that's really important to note.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, Daisy.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that each individual saving proposal is considered in terms of the equalities impact assessment, but we also have a look at all of the savings together and do a cumulative impact of them to ensure that there is not one group with protected characteristics that is overly impacted in an adverse way by those proposals. So it's not just at an individual level, but we do look at the entirety of the budget, the demand, inflationary pressures that are going in, as well as the savings, to ensure that we're doing that overall impact across our population.
Well, thanks very much to Children's Select as well, John, for the questions. I'm now going to move on to a series of questions from House Select. I'm going to ask Johnny to ask them, but could you remember, Johnny, to make the reference for those diligently watching online so they can look up in the book into the agenda pack.
Of course.
Do
the references bear relation to our current agenda pack?
Yes.
For this meeting? Brad,
yeah, it's a reference of the main budget papers, presumably, is it?
I think it does, yeah.
I think it depends what you were looking at when you formed.
I think we were looking at the draft, but yeah. We'll assume it's the same.
You might want to go for paragraph numbers if you have them.
If I have them,
okay.
Which I don't, sadly. Okay.
Give it your best shot.
We've got quite a lot of questions, so apologies for that, but it was really good that the committee engaged with this so positively, and we had some really good discussion at our informal briefing last Friday. So I'll go through them in order, Emma, if that makes things easier for you, does it? So on the first one, are we confident that the budget fully covers the pressures on staff costs of providers? This is just a reference to the quite often in the quarterly reports, we note there are pressures around staffing costs and providers, so I think that's where this question came from. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. So absolutely, we are very aware of the impact of some of the national changes, particularly around the employer national insurance contributions, the national living wage. We are working very closely with our providers in terms of understanding the impact and mitigating this, particularly as we go into the process of setting those uplifts for next year. So it is something that we are very excited on. We are confident that our current figures will address these issues, but obviously there is ongoing negotiation and discussion with our providers in this area. There is a risk, contractually across all service areas, and there is the money that's been put aside to address this if we need to on a kind of case-by-case basis. So there is some additional contingency in place if that does turn into an additional pressure.
Thanks, Emma. And then the next question is a narrative around savings. This is referenced Annex 7 on pages 75 to 76 of the budget papers. Members were wondering if there could be clear and literal explanations for the actual saving line that would be reduced, especially for sort of larger proposed savings, so perhaps those over £500,000 or £1 million.
Yes, so I mean, the savings proposal descriptions do include the overall approach that we will take to making these savings. Unfortunately, it isn't always possible to be very literal and very specific, as many of the decisions that we will be making relate to our statutory responsibilities under the Care Act, and we have to continue to deliver those statutory responsibilities, and we'll do so. So they are individually focused and will vary as we go forwards. So in terms of the spending lines, it's just not always possible to be detailed. For example, it may predetermine the outcome of a review, possibly, where there may be impacts more broadly rather than specifically adult social care around staffing. Again, that may predetermine the outcomes of some of those. So we've tried to be as clear as we can, recognising those statutory responsibilities, and we cannot risk non-compliance in terms of that. So as we move forwards into next year, we're happy to give more detail in terms of reporting against those as they emerge.
Thanks, Emma. So the next question is a reference on page 72 of the draft budget papers. It's in reference to the projected 1.4 million savings from the learning disabilities and mental health placements. And it makes a reference to working with the market in an outcome-focused way to ensure independent living and ensure people are appropriately placed. Does this mean seeking to support more people living independently and spending less on residential care? And if so, do you have an idea of how many people that would be roughly and whether it's achievable within a year?
So the service is confident that it is achievable. We have been prudent in terms of some of the figures that we've put forwards, and we also look to experience in previous years where we've been able to do similar things with similar outcomes. You are right in kind of suggesting that a lot of this will be based on moves from residential care to more community-based provision. We've had some success in recent years in terms of reducing out-of-county placements, bringing people back into Wiltshire, and this has been supported by our capital programme around buying properties. A lot of work has been happening this financial year to prepare us for next financial year, but we will start to realise those benefits into the next financial year. So overall, we are confident.
Thanks, Emma. The next two questions actually are broadly similar in theme. The projected saving of 1.835 million from undertake strength-based reviews in the whole life pathway, and then the projected saving of £500,000 from undertake strength-based reviews in whole life pathway with a focus on mental health services. So for both those questions, does it mean, again, as above, more people living independently rather than residential care?
So that will form part of it, but obviously what we can't do is kind of double count the same savings. So this is looking more broadly. Adult social care does carry out regular care reviews. A focus of those reviews is how we promote independence and ensure that the level of care in place is the right level of care. We know people's needs will change. They may sometimes go up, but they actually often go down, particularly if somebody approaches us when they're in a crisis. We will see, their situations improve. By completing annual reviews, we can check that the care is at the right level and identify where those savings may come from. So, as we've talked about, a move from residential care to supported living may be one area. We may be looking at adapting somebody's home, so that actually means that they're independent and don't need support workers coming in, or we may access our preventative services, our reablement services, for example, where we can help people develop new skills and regain that independence. So it's very much about being agile and flexible and making sure that the care reflects somebody's needs at that specific point.
Okay, thank you. So the next question, and the reference is page 70, and this was a question from members. I think they made reference to things like the water companies and some of the controversy around, payments to shareholders, etc. Do we have any visibility as to how much providers are paying shareholders? Do commissioners of health and social care services factor in shareholder dividends during the procurement process? The committee did accept that this is something possibly won't be able to open today, but that we might seek to look at going forward, particularly for some of the big providers.
So we do collaborate with providers to understand their costs, and we use a model called Care Cubed to help us with this. However, in terms of the kind of broader elements of the question, we do rely on providers to share information with us, and while we can request it, there is no obligation for them to provide it. Not all providers are private companies. Some have charitable status and therefore may not have shareholders. So again, those dividend information may not always come forward. But I think obviously happy to work with the committee if this is something that they would like to explore in more detail.
Thanks. And the next one really is just a general comment, really. It just asks that in future budgets and final performance reports, can we see, financial performance reports, can we see more detail concerning the spread of spend across the directorate so that the committee can better understand where the pressures on demand and savings are coming from?
So that is a me question, and I will refer to the previous question asked by Councillor Hubbard in terms of improvements. Definitely one area that we do need to look at in terms of enough detail, but not overwhelming in terms of then the volume of reports. We've got to ensure that there is enough clarity and understanding for those readers. So it's one area that we will continue to review. Okay,
thanks, Lizzie. Emma, the next one's on the Shared Lives programme on page 74. Committee members wondered if the projected saving of 0.18 million is ambitious enough for the increased use of the Shared Lives programme. They felt, this is a potential tool to deliver really quite, significant savings. And is that?
Yes, so we are keen to promote the use of shared lives further, and we are ambitious in this. The service has expanded over the last 2 years from 36 to 51 placements. However, expansion is dependent on recruiting those shared lives carers and families to work with us. So we do have plans to recruit and train further shared lives carers. So there may be opportunities in subsequent financial years, but we are being prudent in terms of this financial year to make sure that we are not kind of over suggesting the impact, but it is certainly an area of focus for us and one that does offer potential financial benefits.
Okay, thank you. The next 4 questions all relate to page 15. So paragraph 47, and the question from members is, how is the market going to be developed further and why? What is the current state of that market and does it deliver in terms of availability and quality?
So we do have a number of strategies published, and we have a number of strategies in development that will inform our market development. So we do have ample home care, we have ample residential care and nursing care for older people. We are aware of where our emerging pressures will come from. In particular, we will need more capacity for people with complex dementia or other complex needs, and we're developing the market to meet this need. We do lack capacity in terms of people who need supported living. Although we have purchased a number of properties and more are planned, that is an area we need to continue to develop. And this work is continuing. We do quality assure all our providers, and we work with CQC and our safeguarding teams to ensure that we are delivering quality provision, as are our providers, and we have various checks on an ongoing basis that can assure us regarding that.
Okay, thanks. I'll just move the next questions around a bit. No, actually, no, I'll do them in order. Sorry, I just noticed the paragraph order numbers aren't quite in order. Paragraph 50 on that same page, what's contained in the budget to help speed up discharge from hospital to efficient and effective reablement?
So we have a number of discharge-focused initiatives that are included in the budget. This includes Wiltshire Support at Home, our Wiltshire Reablement Service, and also acute hospital in reach, which is where our social workers are based on the wards, identifying people as early as possible who are ready for discharge. We also receive 2.39 million of adult social care discharge funding. And again, this is addressed at discharge schemes and has been amalgamated within the Improve Better Care Fund. Also from April 25, Wiltshire Council are incorporating the Home First service into our portfolio, which will bring a number of discharge activities together and improve efficiency and speed up discharge.
Okay, thank you. And we're nearly there. The committee wondered if we could have more detail on capital investments in property, and that's in relation to paragraph 49 of page 15.
So as I've touched on some of
Touched
those
on that earlier, really.
yeah, investments, we've agreed to purchase 15 for supported living. We've completed on 5, and we're in the process of the remainder of the purchases. We're still ambitious to continue this, so we are looking again for more properties as we move forward into the next few financial years.
Sure, thank you. And then just finally from me, where in the budget can we expect to see the impact of the transformation programme on adult social care costs? And the reference here is paragraph 48, again on page 15.
So we do have, as you've said, a Transforming Adult Social Care programme. There are multiple work streams. It's very ambitious and comprehensive. So the impact on the budget is reflected across all of these areas rather than one single area. We do give priority in our transformation programme to projects that will have both the highest impact for customer outcomes and also the best value for money for the local authority. One example where we will start to see that impact is self-directed support, which is giving more choice and control to people how they receive their care, and also again offers better value. So as we move forwards again in these schemes, we will be more clearly able to link the transformation activity to those spending lines.
Sure. Okay, thank you. We also had a question that Councillor Joe Trigg submitted, and Joe's here, so I don't know, Joe, if you wanted to ask this question or...
Yeah, thanks, John. I think actually most of it has been covered
yeah.
and addressed, and certainly the second part of that absolutely covered. I was very much looking for that evidence of capacity in the market and community-based activity, and understanding, which I think you've just covered probably in the last question, is what are the costs of us doing things very differently in order to be able to realise the savings that are being made. But I think you've covered those, and they'll be covered in Help and Select. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And Emma, thank you, and Lizzie as well.
Thanks, Johnny. Again, really good questions. Thanks for all members for those. Just moving on then.
Sorry, Chair, can I just make
by all means.
again, I just wanted to reiterate the same point around working with the ICB, working with our acutes, particularly now that they're under one management. The question about discharge. Discharge is a really complex area. The press love to make it simple. It's either bed blocking or prescriptions or whatever it is for an article. It's really complex. And again, I think from what I can see, the working there is getting better and better between us and the ICB. It's not perfect yet. I doubt it ever will be. There will always be complexity there. But I do think, and perhaps this is something that whether through either Health Select or potentially the Health and Wellbeing Board, we could look at trying to get some further drill down onto how that's working. Health and Wellbeing might be a better format in that it's both the council and the ICB and other health partners, because I do think it's probably worth having a better combined understanding of that. Health absorbs vast amounts of my time, but I appreciate most of us don't have that degree of understanding of that complexity, and we could probably do with a bit more of it.
Thanks for the clarity, Richard. Right, moving on then to Environment Select Committee. would you like to, there are some questions from Gavin as well, but we'll take those. They're all in the mix, aren't they? Over to you, Jerry, please.
Chair, I was going to say, Chair, if Gavin would like to ask them now, are you happy to?
Chairman, I'm not, they relate to environment. I'm not a member of Environment Select, so I'm quite happy to defer to the chairman of Environment Select and then deal with these as we go.
Okay, so I'll take the ones that we discussed at meeting yesterday, and then we'll come back to those if Gavin wishes us to. Okay. So we had a meeting yesterday, and paragraph 175. Can we be reassured that there is enough capacity in the climate team to cover its remit and demands in the budget going forward?
The answer is yes. We are making sure that there are enough resources in climate team and the rest of the council, because it's a joint effort throughout the services to make sure the program is delivered. Also, as you know, there are certain programs that come along, such as the Warm Homes Grant, which then we make sure there is a resource available to deliver those specific programs as well.
Sorry, Chair, I think it is really important to note the climate change team there is there to go out, engage with the wider world, bring those grants in, bring funding into the council to then enable delivery. And I think it's really important that we all understand that. They are not sitting there in themselves as our approach to tackling climate change. They are there to go and get money in on the wide range of government schemes that exist.
Well, Graham, you'll be aware of the climate team anyway. So what is the total capital budget for the programmes that are reducing the council and the county's carbon footprint? Do we have that figure?
We don't have the figures because, as you've seen, the way the capital programme is listed in the report isn't based on that. But of course, we know there is substantial investment in this area, and we will provide the information in due course.
And again, Chair, sorry, when you look on Facebook at the moment, there are interesting debates going on, certainly in Salisbury, as to what is and isn't environmental spend. Is the purchase of an electric vehicle, when that is the most cost-effective way to buy a vehicle and run it over the course of its life, compared to buying a petrol vehicle or a diesel vehicle, is that a climate change initiative, or is that simply the council being sensible in its procurement? Equally, the Council House Build programme, you could argue, has a climate change element because we're building to net zero, but that's there to save money for the most vulnerable in society. And so it's really hard with some of the big projects we've got to be able to get to that level of detail. I have seen some claims ahead of forthcoming elections of vast numbers that I can't get close to comprehending, because it just isn't the way that we break that kind of work down.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll turn to highways then. So what assumptions are there in the budget about funding from government to maintain our highways for this financial year and for future years?
So we've had confirmation of a government capital grant for highways maintenance for this year, for 1 year only. That is £23.6 million for 25-26, which is on par with what we've received in the last few years. There's an additional allocation of £8.6 million as well. I should say that government is holding back 25% of that 8.6 million. And they haven't announced the conditions for receiving that 25% incentive funding. Other than that, we normally receive what is known as integrated transport block, a value of about 2 million, just over 2 million a year. This has not been confirmed as of today by government, and we just do not know what we're going to receive for integrated transport block. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So then we'll turn to paragraph 99, and that is what is the income generated by highways and transport services through car parking and street works. It'd be fairly helpful to know what the incomes are for all income generated services, though particularly for highways and transport. Now, this is a fingers in the air thing for you, but depending on where they come from.
So the income generated, the latest figures, which are until end of November 24, so 12 months leading to end of November, was £6.97 million was the income from off-street car parks. That compares to the previous 12 months, which was £6.5
£8 million. So there's an increase in the income in car parks. That's the trend, which I think was the question. I should point out that the increase is mainly due to higher usage rather than increased charges. Thank you.
So thank you. On that theme then, are the ongoing costs of car parking covered by income generation, and what are all the other budget lines, for example, maintenance and capital related to car parking going forwards?
Yes, the income does cover all the costs of running our car parks, including maintenance and including business rates that we have to pay on car parks as well.
Yep, thank you.
But Chair, the nominal profit that then comes out from parking has got by law to be spent on transport. So in our case, it's into subsidising buses. So it's not that the council is sitting there using parking to subsidise anything else. We're using it to keep vital bus services running.
Integrated then, that's what I would say. Anyhow, so we'll move to waste. Is the new burdens budget being used in, sorry?
Sorry, there was one other point I was going to make there, which is on a broader point, but again, like John, I sit on an LGA board. Some of at the moment, if you're in London, for example, you get lane rental for, if there are roadworks, you get large amounts of money for the inconvenience of having your roads dug up. I am sensing a shift in the Department for Transport to enable all of us to perhaps benefit from those moving forward. It's not going to help us inside this budget, or if it does, it'll kick in some way through. But it's worth watching that one, because at the moment, some of the costs that utilities companies pay, given the disruption that a certain gas network is causing in Salisbury on the A36 by not filling in their completed works yesterday, I think they should be penalised for that when they can't be, for whatever reason, they can't get roads finished and it's causing delays. It's really good news, I think, that there seems to be movement, to, not from an LGA, but from a Department of Transport perspective, to enable that to be rolled out across the country. It would be good.
Thank you for that. Is the new burdens budget being used in 25-26 to prepare for the implementation of food waste collection? And how is that being spent? Because that obviously comes in 20, I think we're planning to bring it in 27. So are we building up to that?
We are working our way through all the costings and the design of the new service for food collection. Any new burden money will be set aside to see how it compares to our own estimate of what the service will cost. So work in progress, and I'm sure we will report it to Environment Select in due course.
Right, okay, so that was all the ESC ones from me and my group. Now, Gavin, did you want some answers to these? Chair, I'm quite happy to hand over to Gavin to ask these questions if he likes. He submitted quite late, but I think they were in time because they've been printed, so.
Yeah,
Gavin,
and if Gavin's happy with that, I'm happy with that. But just to add that there are, on our question time sheet, there are some questions of Gavin's which were submitted which aren't here, but the top table should have all those questions. So we may not see the questions, but Gavin's going to ask them all, and we're going to get answers to them all. Over to you, Gavin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Jerry. So I thought I might do these in order, as this might be easier for both Lizzie and Parvis to deal with, and hopefully they have notice of the three questions which Henry has kindly alerted me to, the fact, as you say, Chairman, were submitted but were not printed on the sheet. So the first one relates to paragraph 81 on page 21. And my question is, paragraph 81 makes reference to steep rises in utility prices and the adoption of a carbon reduction strategy to reduce their impact and make savings. Are there details of this programme and how confident are we in the likely savings?
I'm sorry, Chair, we have not got those questions.
No. I've only got the ones on the sheet that's printed here.
Well, Chairman, I'm quite happy to defer if the answer is that officers don't. Oh, I beg your pardon.
I do have these questions, and there are questions that were included on the list of questions that came from Gavin. Some of them, as you've just referenced, weren't included on the central list, but I do have answers to some of them. I am very happy to take those questions, as Gavin did submit them to me yesterday. I have got answers. Some, as a matter of detail, we don't have at this stage, but we will be able to then, provide in due course. So in terms of that first question about paragraph 81, There are several different approaches being taken to reduce the council's carbon footprint, as Parvis has already alluded to, in terms of the breadth of the activity across the organisation. Some of these obviously do provide some energy savings as well for the council. You can see some of these elements in the capital programme. So there is a carbon reduction scheme. Budget for next year, so for 25-26, is £2.75 million. We can provide more detail in terms of the nuts and bolts, the detail of what the schemes are across that capital programme, if it is helpful. We have got evidence from previous spend, so this programme is not new for next year. We have seen spend across many financial years now, and we have confidence that the earlier rollout of some of those schemes really does give us significant confidence that those savings will be delivered.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And again, apologies for the confusion, but these were all submitted at the same time on Monday morning. So on to paragraph 92, and I'm not asking around the specific references to the Westbury Town Council here, but rather in the broader remit. Are there other asset transfer plans in place for other towns and parishes? If so, what is the value and the time frame of these, and what is the balance of transfers between assets and services and the relative savings achieved by the council on those delivered to date and those in the pipeline?
There certainly have been other discussions that are ongoing. We have this small matter of elections coming up. Who knows who'll be running town council? So you can't crystallise anything there until we know what's happened with that process. So there are other discussions ongoing, but I don't think it would be prudent to put any form of actual saving into a line item until we know post-election whether some of those will continue.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you for that. That's a perfectly reasonable response from the leader, and thank you for it. Para 99 is my next question, which relates to the Wiltshire transport model and its interrelationship with the business plan. And we make reference to rising income from below par use of our car parks and fees from utility companies for digging up our roads. And again, the leader made reference to the latter of those. What is the current trend on our car parking charges in terms of patterns of use and occupancy of our car parks, please?
So as I just answered to the chair of the Environment Select, so the income from car parking for the 12 months up to the end of 24 was 6.97 million. The preceding 12 months was 6.58 million. So income is increasing, and as I explained, we've hardly changed any charges there. So this is about increased usage of our car parks.
And is there a bit, I think what I was trying to get to here, Chairman, was is there a particular pattern of occupancy or usage within those figures that you're detecting?
As you know, the usage pattern is very complex, yes, about location and what happens, what types of journeys are made, weather dependency, etc. So there is a pattern. We constantly look at that, but not easy to explain in a simple answer.
Thank you for that. If I can then move to paragraph 102, Chairman, on page 25, which relates to the impressive work which has been generated through the Wiltshire Towns programme. And as you know, Chairman, I'm the divisional member for Malmesbury, and I should acknowledge the excellent work that has been enabled in my own town through this programme of work. And of course, the paragraph makes reference to the ending of that particular funding stream. So my question, so trying to get it from the government, maybe a rather futile exercise given what's going on, but is there any other source of potential funding for this programme of work?
Yeah, when I got this put into our budget, gosh, four or so years ago now, there was no way of putting it into base budget at that point. And also, we didn't know if it would work. We had some pretty good ideas. We thought that we knew what we were doing. I think the evidence is very much that this has worked, and it's worked well. Most of our towns are bucking the occupancy trends in terms of number of vacant shops. They have fewer vacant shops than you would expect across the southwest or the country. spend data is a little harder to pin down, but some of the data we've seen suggests spend is growing again in our market towns and is doing better again than national trends. So I think there's some very good evidence sitting there about what we've managed to achieve. You know, I like to plan ahead. The programme was a little slow getting started. Everything councils do, everything government does tends to be slow getting started. That meant there was enough money left to ensure that the programme can continue delivering on its current footing for next year. Again, I wouldn't want to presume beyond that, given that we have elections coming. I think it is really important that we find a way for this programme to continue, but to evolve at the same time. And I think we've got, as an authority that prides itself on its evidence base, I think we need to go back to the evidence. I think we need to see what has worked, where there's still improvements needed to be seen. And if I have anything to do with it, make sure we find a way of continuing to fund this. I can't sit here telling you that right now because we're talking about next year's budget, not this year's. We've got enough budget for this year. So I think it's a matter for the next council. I think it's really critical personally that we continue to build on this. And I think especially the small funding, and it is small funding, that we pass on to towns with criteria as to how they need to spend it, I think has really helped many, not all, but many of our towns and city to think about what they can do to really drive that footfall, that experiential economy. I was at the Chippenham Place Board, sorry, I'll shut up in a second, but I was at the Chippenham Place Board last Friday, and listening to some of what the town council's done from that, and then what they're doing on top of that with other funding sources, and how it's shaped their thinking, really gives me confidence that this is something, that this is behind the reason why Wiltshire's towns are doing better than most others, and gives me confidence that this is something we've got to find a way to continue to push. But it is a matter for the next council.
Chairman, that's a very helpful report, and often as Councillor Clure and Councillor Potter will know, given my opposition role on budgets, there's often a bit of a fisticuffs in the nicest possible way on these matters, and given this is an election year, but I think this is an area where there's a strong degree of consensus. Actually, I think it was a very good initiative. I take the leader's point that it started relatively slowly, but I think therefore a lot of good work has been done as a result. And I too would like to find a way that we can secure some form of funding going forward to enable this good work to continue.
I should also add that with devolution, we don't know precisely, one of the areas that will sit with the mayor is in this area of economic development. It may be something that can be crystallised through that strategic mayoral authority. I'm aware of other councils that want to try and understand what it is we're doing and how they can perhaps learn from it.
Chairman, that concludes the list within Environment Select. Do you now want to revert to Councillor Trigg's question and to give at least people a break from listening to me, which might be helpful?
Thanks very much, Gavin. Yes, that concludes the operational questions that come from the select committees, in essence. Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. Yes, John.
Would you indulge me with just being able to build a very small question on what Gavin just asked with regards to the town initiatives? Because I do agree, I think they've been a highly successful procedure. It was just, I do beg your pardon, one thing you said then, Richard, that struck a chill, not what you said, but in terms of the government and whether it becomes a strategic thing and goes up to... Can I just ask for a reassurance that as we go through this journey, that none of us have any idea where it's going and what it's doing? You know, let's be honest, none of us have got a clue what the government's plans are and where it's going to go. And I'll refer you to your own comments about their competence earlier. One of the issues, one of the reasons I think our town centre programme has been successful has because we've delegated down to as low as we can so that the place-making decisions have been made by people who really understand the place. Can I just ask that as whatever negotiations, discussions, all the rest of it take place, as this god-awful regionalisation comes in and we have a metro mayor, that we try to protect place, as this is a great example of decisions being made as low as possible, continuing to be.
Thanks. I think that point about our approach, my approach for devolution is fair. I'm absolutely adamant. Devolution means saying, here is some resource, you work out how to use it best in your area, in your small area, because I can give you a pretty good idea of what Salisbury needs. There are bits of Salisbury I've shaped with the marketplace and so on over the years. I couldn't tell you what Melksham needs or Malmesbury. Well, I might get some, some of the stuff around history we might sort of be able to work through. But I think it's really important that this is about using a version of devolution of some funding to enable, to empower. I don't think government's approach to devolution is about empowering at a localised level. I think it's about empowering at a more centralised level, which is difficult, challenging. The reason I think this is an area where we need to keep an eye for devolution is there will be funding coming from central government, and part of that funding will be about economic development and regeneration. This is fundamentally a regeneration programme, albeit by a name, if we'd called it regeneration, it would have sounded wrong. It wasn't. The ethos of this is about empowering. But you could argue to government or to a mayor that it was a regen programme. So there is a chance that we could say pretty clearly that to a future mayor, this is how we can deliver regen. This is the evidence as to why it works. So this is why it needs to be funded that way. Otherwise, or if a mayor became too dominant, we'd have to try and fund it ourselves. I don't think we need the full $1 million a year to deliver the benefit. I think realistically, you could probably for about 600,000 at the moment, but you're going to need to uplift some of the grants that are going in, and we've been doing that a little. So 600,000 growing over time, you could probably work with. I really need Victoria here to try and give confirmation there, and she's not available at the moment, Victoria Maloney. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any disagreement on this. This is absolutely about helping our larger parish councils to figure out how they want to see their places grow, and the place boards are a step beyond and above that for the very large towns.
Right, just moving on to the management committee, and I was explaining the role of the committee from the point of view of scrutiny as the business plan, and I was really interested to see that when I looked to see how many times the business plan popped up in the draft budget, it was 41 occasions with lots of reference around, how it's financed and so forth. So we have a series of questions. Joe, I wonder if you would take, even though some of the questions didn't necessarily come from you, are you able to run through them one after the other here until we get to Gavin? Would that be okay? Okay, over to you then, Joe, and thank you for your question.
Okay, thank you. My very first question is actually just a plea, which is I understand actually the impacts of but a contents page for the budget pack would be really useful, because when you are working through it and you see something it's quite difficult to find a way through it. So that's a plea. So the first question on here is about 5% of core spend goes on running elections. Does this reflect parish and town councils now contributing, and does it include PCC elections? That's on page 12.
Thanks, Councillor Trigg. I'm happy to take that question, Chair. So the helpful infographic which explains for residents how the budget breaks down has a line or a section that says running the council and running elections 5%. So it's not just the elections, it will relate to members' allowances, it will relate to salaries for staff and that kind of thing. In terms of the elections, running an election for this council costs about £1 million. And when we run the election in relation to the Police and Crime Commissioner, we recover the full cost of that, about £500,000 from government. The same for the general election, but broadly, £1 million to run for all of our 98 seats plus whichever parish, town or city council seats are contested. We are recovering for the first time, I think in the history of this council, we're recovering those costs proportionately from the town, city and parish councils, and that is accounted for in a line in one of my savings targets. So it is taken into account in that 5% figure, in as much as that relates to running the elections, part of it.
And sorry, Chair, just to reiterate that, I mean, this was a discussion that I had very late in the day. I think after I'd managed to read the documents over the weekend and highlighted that didn't make sense. I mean, 5% of our budget over the course of 4 years, you'd be what, £85 million. It doesn't cost anything. That's the cost of running the administration of the council. To take that as a sense check, large organisations, 5% of your total cost to run an organisation, it's in the right margin. It demonstrates that we are being, compared to the wider sector, industry, whatever, well, certainly better than the sector, but the industry as a whole, we're being relatively efficient there. So I think that's the point that I take away from that figure. Perhaps we need to take the holding elections out from that infographic, because it just doesn't, it's such a small fraction of it. It probably doesn't need to be there. So thanks for highlighting it.
Okay, thank you. Next question is around the finance, investment and income and expenses, pages 59 and 71. So that talks about an increase in £11 million. And that was just, could you confirm the details really related to that line?
Yeah, this is one of those lovely ones that if anybody is interested, it's down to Treasury Management on the capital programme. So this is the capital financing costs of the schemes included in the capital programme that are funded by borrowing. So it includes an element of the technical financing of that debt in lieu of a principal payment, and also interest cost associated with that borrowing as well. So it does seem significant, and of course it is significant when you see the scale of the programme. The programme set next year in excess of £200 million. And as grant funding reduces, we will see the burden placed on the council and the local taxpayer in terms of continued need for investment in our infrastructure. Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks very much. That's back to you then, Gavin. If you could conclude all of your questions, any that are extra to this, by all means go.
Thank you, Chairman. And indeed, there are two which have not been printed, which relate to paragraphs 141 and 147. Hopefully, again, colleagues at the top end have got those. So the first one relates to the, as you rightly said, Chairman, the business plan programme and its methodology of funding, which, as I understand it, was from the dedicated reserve that was created to support the business plan, and from the sale of various capital assets for the council. My question really relates to more the medium-term financial strategy than it does the specifics of next year's budget. So my question is this: referring to the funding of the business plan programme and a change in the funding of this in the last stages of the medium-term financial strategy, the MTFS, with a 2.265 million direct contribution, is this because of the likely fall-off in the sale of capital assets and exhaustion of the business plan reserve? If so, what is the balance of the relative decline of these two sources of funds? Does the 2.265 million cover the entire cost of the likely business plan programme in the latter stages of the MTFS, or is part of the programme funding still coming from those sources? If so, what is the relative balance between those two elements? Will the need to directly fund the business plan programme require increased funding beyond the MTFS? I'm sorry, Chairman, there are about 9 questions in there, actually. I think I've just counted.
Unfortunately, I think there's a little bit of confusion here in terms of the business plan programme and the transformation change programme. So the 2.265 million is the reinstatement of core-based budget funding for that transformation team. And it really is about then ensuring that we don't rely on one-off funding for that team when we are saying that they are a requirement in terms of resources and capacity to be able to deliver the change that is needed across the council, particularly for looking at existing business models, delivery models, and making sure that we're really clear that we are future-proofing ourselves in terms of that for the future. So that team at the moment is currently funded from significant one-off funding through mainly capital receipts flexibilities, but there has been some funding from the Transformation Reserve and some resources occasionally charged to very specific capital schemes that they are supporting. You can see there is a balance of the Transformation Reserve that's reported in the reserves table on Appendix 1, detailed on page 58 of your budget pack. So again, apologies, this is very technical. I'm trying to find your way through the complexity of the budget report and how it interlinks. You can see by the end of the 25-26 financial year, so next financial year, it's projected to have a balance of just in excess of 2.6 million. By 27-28 financial year, that team will be fully funded then by base budget. So that's what it is. It's a reinstatement to ensure then that very precious resource capacity is available for the council.
Thank you. That's very helpful, Chairman, and apologies for creating confusion there. If I could come to the two that unfortunately have not been printed in the documentation. The first one relates to paragraph 141, and this is the variations in the collection reserve, which I know has a degree of complexity about it. And my question is, paragraph 141 makes reference to the estimated surplus in the collection fund of 2.99 million and the variation from year to year between deficits and surpluses in this fund, and the role of the general fund reserve in smoothing out any such deficits if these cannot be covered by savings. Is there a pattern in the occurrence of such deficits and surpluses, that is, within the collection fund? And what is the main reason for this year's surplus?
How exciting that someone's interested in the collection fund.
Possibly just you and me. And
I think it might be across the
next to you, I don't
council.
know.
However, so a quick explanation. Collection fund is administering authority for both business rates and council tax. This is the fund we administer on behalf of all major precepting authorities and other precepting authorities. So the collection fund is made up of both council tax and business rates in terms of those mechanisms, and you will be aware that they are quite complex in terms of their nature, the elements that make up those funds, and very technical in terms of accounting and how we deal with them. So deficits and surpluses accrue on this collection fund where actual performance for the year does not align with the assumptions that were set in the previous year for the fund. So assumptions made on things like collection rates, council tax base growth, number and value of business rates that we will be receiving during the year, business rates of appeals that might actually come in and therefore be paid. It is very technical in nature, and we do see changes year on year in terms of those collections. And actually, for the past 5 years, this space has been very volatile for all local authorities. As you can anticipate through the COVID times with all of the business rate reliefs, some of those have been continued, some don't, so some get funded by government. There's elements in terms of understanding the economics, what's happening to our core business, as well as the council tax. Just then a reconfirmation of the scale of this, £430 million collection fund overall. So it is significant in terms of the accounting. And because of that and because of the complexity, it's really important that we do ensure that we are really clear about surpluses and deficits. They are only ever one-off. They're calculated and impact the following year. Then the following financial year, they are reversed back out again. So you will see only 1 year's worth of deficit or surplus in a balanced budget. I don't actually have access to the detailed workings at the moment in terms of how that surplus for next financial year accrued, and they are accrued and then paid or received by or to the councils, police authority and the fire and rescue service in that following financial year. I will confirm when I do have the detail.
That's kind, and also what I take from that, Chairman, is that the relative degree of volatility in this, because within the general scheme of things, this is a fraction of a percentage point one way or the other. It's not to be dismissive of £2 million. But the factors in here are complicated, and therefore there's a relatively high degree of unpredictability, although the impacts may be relatively small. Thank you very much. And finally, Chairman. Pardon, I was wittering away there. So my question related to paragraph 147, and it's not so much to do with the numbers that are set out here, but actually the way that the Capital Investment Programme Board is working, how you feel that is doing, if I may direct that question broadly, and what other, in addition to, as is detailed in the documentation, the rigours of the business plan requirements, what other provisions are there within the checking of our capital programmes, and in particular, but the balance between those, and forgive me, Liz, I'm not giving you the precise wording here because my computer isn't switched itself off, the balance between those capital elements which are funded by loans taken out by this council, which has a cost to it, of course, and those which are funded by grant provision from government or elsewhere. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Chair. So we have discussed this new governance process that now isn't so new, so it's been in place for probably 18 months, maybe 2 years. The Capital Investment Board itself is having a positive impact on the overall programme management and forecasting. Greater scrutiny on the schemes obviously brings then, more assurance in terms of what we see coming forwards. Funding is now presented as part of recommendations and considerations by that board as well. So it really is a focus, but it isn't the sole focus. So there are conversations and challenge in terms of supply chain, in terms of markets, in terms of other factors that certain managers of schemes might be seeing themselves, where other schemes are being discussed. So it's actually really beneficial as a management tool for us to ensure we have that right scrutiny, challenge and considerations across all schemes. The internal cross-scheme scrutiny does really ensure that we have learnings across the programme and also pick up where there are synergies and opportunities as well, which obviously is useful. Schemes funded by grants are also really critical. So there isn't that focus purely on borrowing, and we know that we have a financial impact in the revenue budget of that borrowing. It really is important for us to ensure that we don't lose grant funding by any restrictions placed on those grants. Quite a lot of grants, particularly in the capital programme, will have some timing limitations. So it's really important that we do really focus on that deliverability and don't lose that grant funding. There is, however, still continued work required in terms of that additional governance. So the capital programme set at 253 million for next financial year. There are some significant schemes in there. You can see things like Trowbridge Leisure Centre in there. So some significant schemes. However, when you look at deliverability of prior years, it is unlikely that we will spend £253 million next year. So really critical that we continue with that challenge. We are really aware in terms of the impact of the slippage of the programme, not just in terms of the deliverability and timing of schemes, but also in terms of that revenue impact, particularly on the borrowings. So still work to do, and we really do welcome challenge, particularly through budget monitoring processes.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thanks, Gavin. That brings us to, most of us are committee members of select committees somewhere along, so I guess all your questions may well have been asked, but does anybody else on the committee have any questions that are of a non-parochial content, please? No? Okay. Is there anybody else? This always goes out. We always do. Is anybody in the room who wishes to ask a question at this point? No? Okay, then I'm just going to say that I think that was an incredibly quality questions, quality answers. Well done to everybody in the room. I'm amazed at the time we actually rattled through those in super quick time. I'm going to ask, I don't know if Lucy wants to say anything at all, but I do want to say I hope that the leader and Lucy, who've both asked for increased scrutiny, can genuinely say that today is quality scrutiny. So I want to thank everybody from that perspective. And I'm sure that when it comes to full council, when people will have seen the briefing last week, and they'll have read all the papers from the Financial Planning Task Group, and they'll have watched this on YouTube, there'll be virtually no questions at all at full council, and we should be home before we know it. Anyway, there we are. I'm going to go to a proposal, if that's okay with everybody. And the proposal is... Sorry, Lucy, I didn't see you move there.
Now to speak,
Carry on.
So a better had, yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you to all of you, because I do think it is really, really important to get that scrutiny, and it's only right that we test the budget in this way. And also thanks to all the officers across, both in Lizzie's teams and all the other directorates that have worked hard to pull this together. As has been said at the start, it's been tough this year, so it's good to get to this position. And of course, we look forward to the debate to come. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go to the proposal now, which is to note the draft Wiltshire Council budget for 25-26 and the medium-term financial strategy for 25-26 to 27-28, and to refer the comments of the committee and the report of the Financial Planning Task Group to Cabinet and full Council for consideration on the 4th of February and the 25th of February respectively. 2, to support ongoing scrutiny investigation of the budget, including the Financial Planning Task Group's continuing focus on monitoring delivery of the budget and the development of the budget for 26-27. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Chris. All those in favour, please raise. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Super. In that case, we're going to move on to agenda items 7 and 8. The first one is the executive response to the final report of the Evolved Task Group. Page 21 of our agenda pack, we have a report presenting the executive response to the final report of the Evolved Task Group. We endorsed the task group's report on the 27th November and referred it to the relevant task group recommendations for response. So, Richard, I'm going to ask you to comment, and then I'm going to ask John Hubbard to comment, if you would, please. So, Richard.
Chair, I think that what we've had here is actually a very useful piece of work. Sometimes when you're stuck dealing with a day job, it's good to get someone else coming in and just having a look at precisely how something's functioning. It's certainly given me the thought that actually I should have slightly sleepy shoulders and put Nick in charge, or volunteer Nick to oversee some of the transformation work going on, given the amount of time that, for example, the Integrated Care Board takes up at the moment. So I think there were some useful elements coming out of that. I very much welcome the work. I think it's come up with some good recommendations.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you, Richard, for the response. I think I can safely say that we were very pleased that everything was accepted on this. That was, I think, absolutely in the spirit of the whole piece of work from start to finish. And I think it was a very useful piece of scrutiny to have undertaken and partaken in. I'm delighted, I genuinely am delighted you've accepted our recommendation about having a responsible cabinet member, and I know that will come up again on the next report as well, but I think that will help significantly with focusing and building on this. Interestingly, I'm not sure if you're aware, the LGA set up a new transformation network, which I'm part of, and some of these issues are ones that at the weekend I went on we were talking about, and so it's not unique to Wiltshire alone. And interestingly, not unique to just the implementation of a new software system like Oracle has been, but many other transformation projects have hit similar challenges along the way. So, but no, all in all, Chair, I think it's a good response from the executive. I'm delighted they've accepted everything, and we look forward to seeing how things progress with it under Nick's leadership.
I see Stuart rushing to the mic, so anything you'd like to say? I mean, obviously it's all been said, I think, but you're okay. Right, I would like to thank the Evolved Task Group, because I don't think there was just 1 or 2 meetings. I think it was not that way at all. So another piece of excellent scrutiny. Thank you, John, for chairing it. Okay.
I have to say it was made easier by the fact that we had excellent members on that task group, and the core of those that were there throughout, Ruth, Mark, me and you, yeah. I mean, the having people who really were willing to dig into it and spend that time, and that time between meetings looking at things as well, made a huge difference.
Thank you very much, John. Right, so I'm going to come to a proposal. The executive's response to the final report of the Evolved Task Group. 1, to note the executive's response to the final report of the Evolved Task Group, and 2, to note that further monitoring and scrutiny of the actions set out in the executive response will be considered as part of the committee's legacy process. Seconder, thank you, Chris. All those in favour, please raise. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Lovely job. I thought I was back in Wales there for a minute. Lovely job. Right, let's move on to 8 then. Executive response to the final report of the Transformation Task Group. On page 29 of the agenda pack, we have a report presenting the executive response to the final report of the Evolve Task Group. We endorsed the task group report on the 27th of November of 24 and referred the relevant task group recommendations. So we now have a response from the leader and also subsequently from a member moving in to task group management. Chris, so over to you, Richard, please.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I think broadly the same points apply as to the my last comments. I mean, just depending on the project, some of these get heavy scrutiny from a cabinet perspective on the regular Monday meetings. So, if we look at the work around Oracle, that has been reported back in on a frequent basis. Equally, something that I used to pick up with Andy on a regular basis, particularly when the work was in its most intense periods. But again, I take the point. Having a dedicated cabinet member who can perhaps has the diary availability, which the role of leader can be a challenge to find diary availability during sometimes. Certainly some daytimes. I think that would be really helpful to be able to get that dedicated channel to understand what it is that's going on a wider level as well. So again, I think it's a really fair point. I don't want you to get the impression these aren't areas where we don't look closely. We do, but I think that more public or that ability to have a slightly more public engagement on some of the issues that would be being raised from scrutiny as well are valuable here.
Thanks, Richard. Chris.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Richard. I'd just like to take this opportunity, and I understood it at the last meeting there, but this was my first sort of challenge of chairing a rapid task group, and I'd just like to thank everybody that was involved with this. And it echoes what John said there. We built on the Evolve programme, the team, into this one as well. So thanks for that. Thanks to Stuart for your expertise in it as well, and thank you, Richard, for you and the Cabinet accepting the recommendations. Particularly, I welcome the three that overview and scrutiny will have a bigger input into this, and that will be reporting on a regular basis. I think that is very welcome, because we tend not to get involved with a lot of things that are happening, and this gives all members a chance to get involved in the important projects that are affecting the way this council is run. And also, I welcome, as you said, you made reference to a cabinet or cabinet members or a lead on the various projects that will be able to come along and discuss and debate and challenge by this group and the rest of the cabinet. One slight note that I will make, though, that I still see that we haven't got a cabinet member signing the document off. It's been left blank. So hopefully this can be resolved in the future. Okay, slight tongue-in-cheek there, but yes, you've got to appoint somebody, I realise that, or a group. Nick, looks like you're going to put your signature on there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, otherwise, please. It's my scrawled one there, but yeah. Otherwise, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody involved.
Thanks, Chris, and again, thanks to the task group. I'll go to a proposal, if that's okay. The executive response to the final report of the Transformation Task Group. 1, to note the executive response to the final report of the Transformation Task Group. And 2, to note that further monitoring of scrutiny of the actions set out in the executive response will be considered as part of the committee's legacy process, including the committee's request to receive quarterly performance reports on the transformation programme. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Chris. All those in favour, please raise. Thank you very much. That's gone through. And that... So we're nearly there, and we'll now move, if we may, to receive updates from the chairs of the select committees in respect of topics under scrutiny. John, do you have anything you want to add from Children's Select, please?
Mike, I think, to be perfectly honest with you, no. It's detailed out in the forward work programme here. Our big challenge is actually what are the items that we were due to try and finish this side of the elections are we going to have to hold over and ask for whoever is in our various seats after those elections to deal with, because we've still got so much business we're trying to finish off. We've had a few long meetings lately. I dread to think what the next one would be if we tried to deal with everything. So, but I think that, and I want to give a reasonable amount of time in our final meeting to look at legacy items.
Yes, good.
Because I think that's really, really important, and I think there are things there that the committee needs to make clear for whatever comes next. These are important things to look at on a periodic basis. So no, I think that the what's left of the forward work programme is there. I'd like, because this is the last time we do the forward work programme at this management meeting, isn't it? So I'd like to take this opportunity, whilst so many officers are in the room, to say thank you for the work that we've had and support we've had from them over the last 4 years as we've continued our work. Scrutiny only works when we're working with the officers that and indeed cabinet member and portfolio holders that we're working with, and I do think that we've been very lucky in Children's that we have very positive relationships, and do believe that we're able to add value, which is always my mantra. So thanks to them, and of course to the committee for the continued hard work that the committee has put in.
Thank you very much, John. Johnny Kidney, Health Select, anything you want to add at all?
Yes, Chair, just very briefly, we had a quite interesting meeting last week. There was a slew of public questions from the unions and trade union in relation to a community health contract. So on the back of that, we identified a need for a briefing from the Integrated Care Board on the community health care contract to enable the committee to have a clear understanding of how the contract will transform services. Following that briefing, we'll then be better placed to consider whether further scrutiny is needed and what form that might take. We did, during the course of last year, receive information about various aspects of the contract, but didn't really have a good enough overview of the changes to provision, so that we're going to take that forward. The other item that we requested at the meeting is to move forward with rapid scrutiny on urgent care reporting, and that will take place in February, with a call for members going out shortly, I believe. And also just to flag that we received a report at our meeting last week on which aims to clarify the role of our co-opted members, and we will be bringing an item to this committee in March for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Jerry, you are on
J, yeah, okay. Yes, I very much look forward to a short full council meeting on the 25th of February as well. By the same, we've done all the work ahead of the time. I think the Comedy Channel will be there to record it if they aren't recording Man United playing football at the moment, because they seem to be spending a lot of time there. I hope there's no Man United fans listening. Anyway, so on a serious note, at our last meeting on the 14th of January, we focused upon the highway issues. We considered the draft local transport plan of over 700 pages, the investment into the carriageway resurfacing, and the update on the implementation of the speed limit assessment group and the recommendations. And once again, that was stimulated by a lively debate. But looking forward to our next meeting on the 4th of March, we've had to slightly rearrange our work plans, so we'll be receiving an update from Leisure Services and the Stonehenge and Avebury World Heritage Site Setting Study. This is a supplementary planning document, so we'll also be looking forward to the next council session. That's all I have to report on that then. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a bit of a tongue twister, that last group, wasn't it? All the S's in that, goodness. Okay, over to me then. I've got nothing to add except thanks. It was an exceptionally good meeting, and thanks to all of the scrutiny teams, and I think thanks to our officers as well, and especially on the top table here with me. So that's wonderful. I'll go to a proposal, if that's okay then, to note the updates of the Select Committee's activity and approve the Overview and Scrutiny Forward Work Programme. The seconder from Chris. All those in favour, please raise. Thank you, that's covered. Now, whilst this is not mandatory, but I do see if there is a Cabinet member here who wishes to make, we anticipated this meeting going on longer than it has done, and so therefore we didn't really sort of prompt any Cabinet members, but as they're all so keen to be here, does any Cabinet member want to give us a brief update? I think it can be clearly said that if you haven't had a question on your Cabinet member role from the scrutiny, then from a budget perspective, wait for those perhaps at full council. but we don't have anything for you. Do you have anything for us at all, Cabinet members? Yes? Okay. In that case, if you could, you may need to, I know who you are, but we may need to say, because it may be that you're not logged in.
Well, I'm Parvis Kansari, apparently. So,
Well, yes, but you have changed, Parvis, since last time, yeah.
I don't want to comment anything on the budget. I actually wanted to say apologise for being late, but I wanted to give the reason why I was late, because actually it was for some good news that I was in Devizes, where our department that helps children with SEND to employment were organising an incredible event at the Corn Exchange, and it was a combination of employers and young people coming from our colleges who were going to come and meet the employers and have a chance to see what opportunities they were, and also to be given interviews. So they were being given trial interviews so that they could understand what an interview would be and so forth. And it included ID Birdie, who have already got one of our young people with SEND working for them. And there was McDonald's and other big companies there. And I just thought, all the work we do, all the numbers that we look at, and all the time we spent in these offices, there was some real work that was being done for young people who will be able to be employed and be active members of our community and living a full life. So I just thought I would end on a happy note.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the whole happy note of today, I think, really. So thank you very much indeed. I'm going to be closing the meeting with just by saying the next committee meetings are scheduled for 10:30 on Thursday, the 13th of February, if we have opposition budget amendments, and 10:30 on Wednesday, the 13th of March, for our next full meeting. Okay, thank you very much indeed.